This message is brought to you by the Capital One Venture X card. Venture X offers the premium benefits you expect, like a $300 annual Capital One travel credit for less than you expect. Elevate your earn with unlimited double miles on every purchase, bringing you one step closer to your next dream destination. Plus, enjoy access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. The Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details. Brought to you by the Capital One Saver Card. With Saver, you earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining, entertainment, and at grocery stores. That's unlimited cash back on ordering takeout from home, or unlimited cash back on tickets to concerts and games. So grab a bite, grab a seat, and earn unlimited 3% cash back with the Saver Card. Capital One. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Excellence. I'm Ben Bergeron, and this is the 5x5. It's built around your questions about the 5 factors of health. As we know, those are the 5 fundamental behaviors that most directly affect your performance, your vitality, and longevity. They're how you eat, sleep, train, think, and connect. In each episode, I'll take 5 listener questions on one of those factors and answer them in about 5 minutes each. Today's factor is on connect. So we've got questions about making a real difference with your kids with limited time. We've got another question about finding your footing when connections slip away. Growing with a partner whose values have shifted. How to nudge a parent toward better habits. And we close with a great question about what it actually takes to have better conversations. So if you want to get a question into a future 5x5 episode, click the link in the show notes. Let's get to it. First question is from an anonymous listener. And they say, a few years ago, I was battling a brutal depression. The mindset training I got from listening to every episode was just enough to help me pull through. Today, I'm in a much better place. I work on it every day, and I believe I'm happier, a better human because of it. Well, that's awesome. I have 2 children, ages 3 and 1. I'm fortunate enough to see them for a few hours every week. They are my world. Their mother doesn't share any of the values I carry so close. So the question is, how can I positively impact their development and help shape their mindset when most of their time is spent in a very different environment? Can I still make a real difference with the limited time I have? Okay, so first, I just want to acknowledge that as someone that pulled themselves out of depression and is now asking how to show up for their kids, that's awesome. We'll talk about this in a future episode, I'm sure, with Patrick. But for the first time in my life, I experienced a depression a few months ago. And man, it was, in hindsight, I look back at it as a wild experience. And the crazy part about it, which I'm actually really excited to share this with you guys, is that the quick little punchline to it, it was not circumstantial, meaning nothing triggered this thing. My businesses are doing incredibly well. I love the people I work with. I am not stressed out. I was not depressed about anything that had happened to me in the past. I was not anxious about anything in the future. Everything was as good as it's been. It was purely this like chemical thing that messed me up. So I'm excited to dive into that. But I just want to first acknowledge how hard that is to go through. And I'm very similar than this anonymous. The work I've done felt like it was just enough to keep me afloat and working through this. So, all right, to get to the root of the real question. First answer, to answer it quickly. The quick answer is yes. You can absolutely make a real difference. Kids don't need perfect parents or equal time between their parents. They need a safe, steady love consistently. So here's what I do is I maybe challenge you to stop thinking about trying to, quote, shape their minds, and instead lean into a couple different things, which is, am I shaping the right environment? We talk about that a lot on the show, as you know, but kids don't necessarily do what we say, but they are going to end up being products of their environment. And maybe not in the short term, meaning because you model something for them, you eat meat and vegetables and you work out. Doesn't mean that tomorrow morning that they're going to eat meat and vegetables and work out. But it's the drip, drip, drip of the consistency of this in the environment. This becomes their norm. And when you do that, that's what ends up shaping them. They will not do what we say, but they will become what they repeatedly experience. And it's not about necessarily about the lectures. It doesn't mean I personally shy away from lessons. We share our 5 H's with the family every morning. I read them a passage from a book I'm reading every morning. So I'm creating the drip, drip, drip. The 5 H's being humble, hungry, happy, healthy, and honest. We talk about those. And then I read something from a book I'm reading. So I'm looking for this drip, drip, drip. This is what it means to be a part of our family. But here's what we want to do is more so than, hey, this is the way you should act, is show up yourself with emotional maturity, calmness, consistency. That's actually what matters. Making them feel so deeply loved, keeping your word, keeping small promises, being calm when things get hard, showing up with curiosity, not judgment, and creating rituals. So things that they'll remember that become a part of what it means to be with you as their parent, whether that's going out and getting breakfast sandwiches every Saturday morning, going for walks in a trail, reading before bedtime. These little traditions mean a lot. That's what creates culture, is what we repeatedly do, amongst other things. So we want to think about, like, they're going to become the man that you model, not what we hope they become. That's a big key distinction. The kids are incredible observers. They're watching how you handle hardship, stress, disappointment, your health, your relationships, your relationship with their mom. That matters. That matters a whole lot more than probably we think it does. And it matters it can matter in short ways, done right. You show up with true presence a few hours a week can do a whole lot more than the volume of distractedness that most parents approach things. So maybe the question is not, do I have enough time? But when I do have the time, am I giving them the very best version of me? And it sounds like from the question that you're already on that path. So kudos to you. All right, let's go to question number 2. Question number 2 comes from Casey. Casey says, I'm wondering about relationships where each person has different values. Certainly something we've talked about a lot. At what point are we too different to coexist and grow together? I'm CrossFit oriented, meal prepping, and prevention focused. My partner used to be very active, but since retiring from the Army, he's really let the reins loose. He says he wants to lose 10 pounds, but consistently eats pizza and wings and doesn't work out much. Can a couple stay together and grow together when their values around health are this different? Okay, there's This is a great question because we've talked about how important values are for everything, from a team, from an organization, from a family, from a meaningful relationship with a spouse. But I think what we want to do in this instance for Casey is understand if it's a true divergence of values or behaviors. And I know that we talk about how, your thoughts become your words become your actions, behaviors, dictate your destiny and who you become. But there is this sort of seasonality to life. And what I want Casey and all of us to recognize here is somebody might value, it sounds like that they used to, right? Casey is CrossFit oriented, meal preps, prevention focused. And then she says, my partner used to be very active, but since retiring from the Army, he's really let the reins loose. Okay, so I think there's still some alignment there, meaning he just might be in a different season of life where he might not have the capacity, he might not have the readiness, he might not have the desire to act on those values. It doesn't mean that they're not there. And I think of this especially for somebody that's coming out of the military, where when anyone leaves any job, there's this sort of identity shift. But for the military, it's even more so, particularly for a career military person. Retirement can be a really challenging thing to navigate. For decades, there was structure, there was accountability, there was purpose, there was movement built into everyday life. Then suddenly there isn't any of that. And sometimes people loosen the reins not because their values have changed, but because they're exhausted, or they're lost, or they're grieving a version of themselves, or maybe they're just simply trying to exhale and catch their breath. So I wouldn't let a temporary situation where husband's retired and now he's ordering pizza and wings be indicative of his overall value system and whether you guys belong together or not. He might just need a chance to kind of recoup. It might be a vacation. Now, Casey, if you had said he retired from the military 19 years ago, and for the last 19 years he's been doing this, that's something different than the way I'm interpreting the question. It's certainly that. It's an interpretation. Because you said since retiring from. And I just don't know the length of that. So here's maybe the way to kind of frame this is the unhealthy behavior that he's exemplifying. If we try to control that, it might backfire because it might come across as like you don't get me and you don't understand where I am, and they feel judged, managed, or like you're trying to fix them. And what can start off as concern on your part is interpreted as pressure, and pressure creates stress. So maybe we shift from how do I get him to value what I value to how do we create this life together where the things that I believe we value are shared and a part of our lives. And we do it in the easiest possible ways. So we're trying to create good habits for him. The way to do that is to make them as frictionless as possible. So it's small, simple things like going for morning and evening walks together. And maybe those walks become a little bit bigger or more adventurous. Meaning it starts off as, hey, let's walk the dog around the block. You could actually even kind of hack this by getting a dog. But let's go for a walk around the block after coffee and after dinner to let's let's drive down to that trailhead, after a month or two and go for a more meaningful walk. It could be things like starting pickleball together. It could be weekend hikes where you actually go into the mountains and do these things. So it ends up being more about inviting the person in, particularly if you feel like their values were there at one point. They might just need a little bit of a nudge to create the flywheel in motion of a healthier lifestyle, because we know that objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Ordering pizza, beer, wings, sitting on the couch is a object at rest. Objects at rest tend to stay in rest. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. The hardest thing is to try to create the motion. So it has to be light, easy, frictionless, a part of the daily system, as opposed to, let me try to fix you. We need to go to the gym together, all of those types of things. So the other part of this is if you approach it with a shared level of mutual respect, where if you truly love him, you want this thing to work out. And I wouldn't put the daily habits in front of the love. Now, there's a little bit of like a ... there. If it becomes where he resents you for working out, he feels less of himself because you're the type of person that cares about that, and it actually is eroding his own self-worth, then that's something different. But people can actually, to answer the question, right? People can absolutely still grow together with different value sets if there's mutual respect. As long as there's not active resistance or they're not dismissive of what matters to the other person or unwilling to meet somewhere in the middle. Like if he absolutely would never go for a walk with you, that's probably a good sign that maybe he truly is on another path. So if you feel like that's just kind of the questions I would ask. Do you feel like he resents you for you working out? And then the next one would be, what kind of life do you guys want to build together over the next 20 years? If he doesn't resent you for your activities, and it's just like more about like you trying to pull him towards you, but he's cool with you doing your thing, I don't think this is cause for like as much concern maybe as Casey thinks it is. And if there's greater alignment in terms of the vision of what's happening down the path, because it might just be this temporary place. So I would suggest trying to avoid the trap of working to fix him and instead reframe this as a way to frictionlessly and easily create the shared pursuits. It might not be the way you do it, right? It might not be CrossFit, meal prepping, and all of, your incredibly healthy lifestyle, but we're trying to get him on the path. And the way we do that is by these small little steps that seem like they're integrated into your life. And then it's all in an effort for a shared future with mutual respect. If we have that, we probably are on the right path. And it's not truly a values misalignment as much as we think it might be.
We are brought to you by Mudwater, the coffee alternative that's become a staple of my morning routine. Here's what I've come to love about summer mornings now that they are here. Before the emails arrive, before the kids are awake, before the day has any demands at all, there are about 20 minutes that are just mine. Right now, the birds are out early. The flowers are in bloom. I take my Mudwater out to the front porch and I just sit with it. It's quiet. I'm present. There's space before all the noise starts. Mudwater is made with functional mushrooms and adaptogens, about 1/7 of the caffeine of coffee, so you can get steady, grounded energy without the spike or the crash. The OG blend is warm, spiced cacao, the kind of thing that actually fits a nice, slow, intentional morning. It's got lion's manes, chaga, reishi, and cordyceps functional mushrooms chosen to support calm and focus, not just throw more caffeine at you. Start your new morning ritual and get up to 43% off the Mudwater OG starter kit with the code excellence at mudwater.com/excellence. That's MUDWTR.com/excellence. We are brought to you today by Momentous, the supplement company built around one standard, making the best products available. I don't take a lot of supplements. I'm fairly skeptical, quite honestly, but creatine is one that I keep coming back to because the research is overwhelming. It's one of the most studied, most proven supplements in existence, and it works. What I didn't always think as much about was the quality of what I was actually getting, though. That's where Momentous signature spec creatine stands apart. It's manufactured in a pharmaceutical facility using reverse osmosis water purification and verified through a 6-stage testing process with 4 independent agencies. That means 10x fewer impurities, tighter heavy metal limits, and screening for PFAS and microplastics. If you're going to take creatine every day, and you probably should, make sure it is the best. Head to livemomentous.com, use the code EXCELLENCE for up to 35% off your entire first order. That's livemomentous.com with the promo code EXCELLENCE. This episode is brought to you by Shopify. When I got into CrossFit way back in 2006, one of the first things that stopped me in my tracks was watching people open affiliates. These were coaches, people who believed deeply in something, betting everything on an idea before most of the world had even heard of CrossFit. I remember being in complete awe of that. The willingness to bet on yourself, to turn what you love into what you do. 20 years later, that admiration has not wavered one bit. The difference now is that the tools to actually do something like that have never been better. Shopify is what makes something like this possible. Beautiful storefronts, no coding required, a checkout that converts, so returning customers can buy in a single click. Plus, a built-in AI assistant called Sidekick that helps you build, troubleshoot, and keep on moving. All you need is the idea. Shopify handles the rest. So if you're ready to start, try it for free at shopify.com/excellence. Today, you heard that right. Free trial at shopify.com/excellence. That's shopify.com/excellence.
Okay, next question comes from Kevin. Kevin says, of the 5 factors, we're having conversations about connect. He says, of the 5 factors, connect is the only one that by definition requires the participation of other people. For years, my social interactions were heavily invested in my kids' sports. Years on the sidelines with active groups of parents. As those events faded and my marriage ended, many of those connections slowly lapsed. I have great interactions at work and at my 6 a.m. CrossFit class, and a small number of close friends who are also busy. But I live in a small town, and I know a lot of interesting people, but I wouldn't ask them to jump in my car at 2 a.m. I love that. I don't ask a lot of people to jump in my car at 2 a.m. either, and I don't have a poker group or any system that creates those opportunities. Sometimes I have 2 unspoken 4 hours at home. Work is done, the house is clean, I've worked out, and I feel like I should be doing more. Is connect the one factor where results aren't entirely in our control? And how do I know if I'm actually in a good place? Okay, this is such a good question because I think like a lot of men, in particularly men in their 40s and 50s, we're all quietly experiencing this, but don't talk about it a lot. There's kind of the more widely publicized about the loneliness epidemic, but it's kind of targeted at the younger generation, the ones that are, scrolling Instagram and doing video games and staying in their basements. But there's this other part that hits home for more like, people like Kevin and myself later in life, especially for people like Kevin whose kids have grown up, no longer has a significant other living with them, and are lonely. And while they probably have the cool work thing and the other stuff, it's just not there. So, community for a long time was just kind of a done for us thing. The school, the sports, the work, the kids, the marriage, there's a lot of the heavy lifting was done for us. Kids get older, marriages change, people get busy, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I know a lot of people, but I don't know a lot of people. They're not truly people in my life. Here's the first part is I don't think necessarily with Kevin something is, well, let's answer the first question, which is it the only one that by definition requires other people and thus is outside of our control? The first one is, depending on who you live with, sleep is actually the one that is probably the hardest because it truly depends on a lot of other people. Meaning I can't just go to bed whenever I want to go to bed. If I want to go to bed at 7:45, I couldn't. I have a spouse, my wife. It depends on what time she goes to bed. I have 2 kids. Depends on what time they go to bed. Those kids also have activities that sometimes don't get done until a certain time of night. So it's not just up to me. It's not just under my control. I have to do a lot to influence that. It requires other people. But it sounds like Kevin is living solo. In that case, then yes, Connect would be the one that's more reliant on other people. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's totally outside of our control. And then let's also recognize that a third of the Connect bucket is connect with other people. The other 2/3 is connect with yourself, meaning understand what brings you true joy, what do you want out of your life, what brings you purpose, what sets your heart on fire. The other one is connected with nature, which is get out into the woods, the mountains, the rivers, the lakes, the oceans, get sunlight on you, and be with the mother that created you. But yeah, there is this idea of connecting with other people, which is massively important, highlighted mostly by the Harvard study, which is referenced all the time in the importance of relationships. Okay, so from there you can kind of like throw your hands up in the air and go, it's outside my control. While it might not be it does rely on other people. I think that we don't want to underestimate the amount of intention and action that we can bring to it. So yeah, Connect is different than the other factors because it involves other people, but it's not outside of our control. You can't control how they respond to it, reciprocity, but you can control your initiative. And I think that's where most adults get stuck, is we wait for community to happen to us, like it did when we were in school, 20s, and raising kids. We assume, it sounds like, as Kevin does, he says this, I even think I'm going to try and find it in his thing, where like he knows people, but they're busy. So this is the assumption that we have, is that everyone else is busy. While that's certainly the case, and we certainly live busier lives than we kind of ever have in humanity, which is kind of this crazy, weird dichotomy. As technology has evolved, it was supposed to create more freedom and free time, to the point where when the washing machine and the dishwasher was invented, they actually had mastermind groups to try to figure out what all of these, at that time, housewives were going to do with all of the new free time that they had. The wild thing is, while technology is supposed to be creating more free time, busyness is an addiction. It has nothing to do with we have the most safest, most luxurious lives that humans have ever had. Anybody making $30,000 a year now lives greater than any king did a couple centuries ago, or certainly a couple thousand years ago. There was no hot water for showers 100 years ago. That's kind of crazy. No one had a hot shower through running water 100 years ago. So this busyness thing that we have, it's manufactured. It's not real. We actually think that we like it. We have to kind of rewrite that. So yeah, people are busy. People also want to connect with you. They want this as much as Kevin does. So what we want to do is, during those 2 hours that Kevin has, where he's kind of thinking, I've done the house is clean, I've worked out, done the work, I have this 2 hours. yeah, it might not be like, how do we optimize even further? That's a great time to reach out. And we can reach out so easily now through a text, very low risk, and initiate. And that's the hard part, is we have to be brave enough to initiate. And we can initiate in very simple, small, easy ways. Want to grab coffee after the 6 a.m. class tomorrow? Simple. Want to watch the game this Sunday? Want to go to the Saturday team workout and buddy up with me in the CrossFit class? I'm grilling on Friday night if you're around. It doesn't have to happen through these grand gestures of want to go hike the Grand Canyon rim to rim next April. It doesn't need to be that. It can be in these small ways. And here's what I think we sort of miss is we understand that we're trying to create really deep, meaningful relationships. The Harvard study said it wasn't the number of them, it was the how deep each one was. So we're looking for that. But that's like saying your fitness isn't about being able to walk to the mailbox. It's about being able to run a sub 7-minute mile. It's about saying it's not about being able to get up off the ground. It's about being able to back squat your body weight 10 times. Yes, for sure. But where does it start? And it starts with these small things. It starts with going to the gym and picking up 5-pound dumbbells. It starts with getting on a treadmill and walking. So it starts with these small things. This is the same thing we want to bring to our relationships. We start small. The other aspect of this is I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater in terms of the Harvard study and the deep, meaningful relationships. I don't think we want to underestimate the power of, quote, weak ties. So research actually shows that acquaintances, so the guy at the gym, the coffee shop owner, the neighbor, those little ones, it doesn't have to be where you sit down underneath a tree for 5 hours with your friend and contemplate the meaningfulness of life, or you cry on their shoulder during hard times. These like small relationships contribute to meaningful happiness and well-being. Not every relationship needs to be the 2 a.m. car ride. So maybe the real question is, do I have people I can be real with? And am I actively, proactively initiating and investing in relationships, not waiting for it to come to me? Because friendships in adulthood aren't found. They're built, just like fitness. And just like fitness, you can start small. We're now in sort of the middle of 2026. My yearly goal for 2025 was to deepen my friendships. And I needed to very proactively take action to make that happen. I realized it was in the same spot as Kevin. So I proactively did it. I set out about 6 different initiatives for me to be able to do this. I invited people down to the place we stayed at on the Cape for day trips and overnight trips. I went on scheduled hikes. Every other month, I met up with one of my good friends for a Friday afternoon, which I took off work and spent it with him. I started working out with another friend every Wednesday morning, and then we got breakfast together. It's like I needed to proactively go and make these things happen. So, yep, it requires other people, but I don't necessarily think it's completely outside of our control. All right, moving on. Question number 4 comes from Lucas. Lucas asks, how can I effectively talk to my parents about healthy lifestyle, nutrition, and recovery? All the things that truly matter. My mom, and he says mom, M-U-M, my mom, I love that, is in her mid-60s. In the last 2 years, both her parents passed away from Alzheimer's and dementia. That's brutal. There's now this unspoken question about whether that's what's ahead for her in 20 years or so. Her lifestyle isn't very active, her diet isn't great, and she drinks alcohol daily, which is considered normal where I'm from. I'm struggling to find a way to open this conversation and nudge her towards the idea that if she changes a few things, she can still have a better final decade than her parents did. Okay, so first, Lucas, just acknowledging, this is a cool question because what's underneath your question, it's kind of obvious, but just to say it aloud, this is not about exercise and nutrition. Yeah, you say things that truly matter, but those aren't the things that truly matter. This is about love. And you're scared of losing your mom or watching her slowly disappear the way that her parents did. So I feel for you. We get this type of question a lot in terms of how do we have these conversations? We're living this lifestyle. How do we bring people that don't have as much of an understanding of the whys behind we do? How can we bring this to them? So yeah, yours is rooted sort of in a sense of fear, and it totally makes sense. I also think that there's this thing that we all should work to accept. And that is that we cannot force other adults to change. They have to want it. And I've talked about the relationship that I have and the mentoring that I've done with over the last 5 years with prisoners. A huge majority of those that are incarcerated suffer from addiction. And they go into the prison system with those addictions. And they're able to get the substances in prison to continue the addictive behaviors if they so choose. And there's lots of programs in these facilities to help them overcome their addictive behaviors. One of the things I've learned talking with those people and the people that work with them is if they're not ready to change, they're not going to change. They have to want it. And this goes the same way for talking to our parents or friends about trying to get them to live healthier lifestyles. No matter how bad we want it for them, if they don't want it themselves, it's going to be a really long, difficult road to the point where it can become detrimental to the relationship, where you want this thing so badly for them, they feel like they're going to become defensive and resist it, because that's what people do, especially parents. The moment the kid becomes the lecturer, the fixer, the health police, most people resist. Not because they don't care, because nobody likes being managed. No one likes to be told what to do. It's just human nature. So maybe the question then becomes for Lucas and all of us that have this going on is, instead of how do I convince them, right? Which is what we're kind of saying here. I'm trying to, he says, I'm struggling to find a way to open the conversation and nudge her towards the idea that That's actually a pretty good way of wording it. So I like that. That's not so much as like trying to convince them that. So Lucas, that's a great first approach. Because what we're not trying to do is like lecture to convince, but sort of what we said in the earlier question with the spouse, the retired, military is we want to invite. So, and have the conversation where we're not going to create any sort of defensiveness. What we're looking for is a way to instill hope. Hope is incredibly powerful. It feels soft. It feels wishy-washy. It feels kind of Care Bear. But hope, agency, meaning it's on them. They own the outcome. And making them feel like there's a connection between the two of us. That's the approach that we want to bring. Hope, agency, and connection. So something along the lines of, Mom, after losing Grandma and Grandpa, I've been thinking a lot about aging and health. And I love you so much. And selfishly, I want as many good years as I can possibly get with you. Would you be against just kind of trying some things with me? So first off, would you be against is a Chris Voss approach where you give them them saying no feels like they are in control. So would you be against? She says, no, I wouldn't be against that. It's like they're in control. And then you make it incredibly small. Like this is the biggest thing that we always, it's the MVP, it's a MVD, minimal viable dose. So it's not like you go there and go, hey, we need the opposite approach to be like, Mom, you're going to get Alzheimer's just like Grandma and Grandpa did. We need to completely overhaul your lifestyle. You're drinking, you're not moving at all. So instead of that, it becomes like what if we started going on walks together? Maybe like a couple times a week. What if we made a meal together or two? How about if we together, you and I, try to cut drinking or reserve drinking just for the weekends? We didn't drink during the week let's just do it for a month and see how we feel. Those tiny little wins do those things. Hope, agency, connection. They create belief system. Because, yeah, genetics matter, but lifestyle matters more. And there's this really great book called The End of Alzheimer's. And it is about the end of Alzheimer's. Like the end of Alzheimer's is the title of the book. The research around it shows that the 5 factors, how you eat, how you sleep, how you train, how you think, and how you connect with other people is the number one thing we can do to control our metabolic health, which then controls the onset of chronic diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, both being a chronic disease. So we want to give them as much agency as possible. So our role becomes less of a coach and more of a caring son. We want to make sure that there's connection so that she feels loved during this conversation, during this process, not judged. That it's an invitation, not a mandate. That we model it ourselves, making it easy for someone to come along, that there's a car going by that they can hop in instead of trying to run it themselves, and that we fully support the small changes, not the holistic big stuff. And then maybe the last piece is, I think this is really big, recognizing that at some point every adult gets to choose. And people are navigating lives with different realities, narratives, circumstances. The way she grew up was not the way you're growing up. So at some point, It's the most important thing that we need to do in this situation is recognize that us loving them, not us trying to change them, us accepting them more than trying to control them, is actually the ultimate act as a son and a true sign of maturity and wisdom.
This episode is brought to you by Function Health. With the World Cup final happening now, I keep coming back to one thing. Every elite athlete on the field has a whole team of people monitoring their health in real time. Biomarkers, recovery, lab work, all of it tracked and acted on. And I think maybe that kind of attention shouldn't be reserved for people who play for a national team. We have access to technology and science that our parents and grandparents could never even dream of. We live in an extraordinary time for understanding what's actually going on underneath the hood. So why wouldn't we take advantage of that? Function gives you 160 plus lab tests every year, the kind of full body picture elite athletes pay a fortune for, so you can stop guessing and you can know where you stand so you can show up at your best. Check your health the way that we do. Function provides those 160 lab tests for just $1 a day, and you get member pricing on advanced imaging. Join at functionhealth.com/excellence. Use the code excellence25 for a $25 credit. That's functionhealth.com/excellence with the code excellence25.
Okay, real talk. Summer's here, and all I want to think about is my vacation, not whether I can still afford it. That's why I've been organizing my finances with Monarch, so I can actually enjoy my summer knowing my money's taken care of. Monarch is the personal finance app that tracks everything: accounts, investments, savings goals, and spending. And you can get your first year of Monarch Core for half off, just $50, with promo code FRUGAL.
Monarch's basically watching your money so you don't have to be too in the weeds on the numbers yourself. Plus, the app can help you catch things about your spending and saving that you may never notice on your own. It's like having a financial advisor in your pocket.
Exactly. My favorite is the widgets that I can put on my home screen, allowing me to see my transactions in real time. And this allows me to stay on top of my spending and stick to my financial goals.
Use code FRUGAL at monarch.com to get your first year of Monarch Core half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRUGAL.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, the world's largest online therapy platform. We talk about mental health more openly now, collectively, than we ever have before, but here is the thing: talking about it and actually getting help are two very different things. BetterHelp's 2026 State of Stigma report surveyed 2,000 Americans and revealed that 85% of them believe getting support is wise, yet 74% say society discourages people from doing so. That gap between believing in therapy and actually seeking it is exactly what holds people back. BetterHelp has over 30,000 licensed therapists, has served more than 6 million people all over the world, and they hold an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 based on over 1.7 million client reviews. They match you based on your needs, and if the fit isn't right, you can switch at any time. So don't let stigma stand in the way of the support you need. Start therapy with BetterHelp. Sign up, get 10% off at betterhelp.com/excellence. That's betterhelp.com/excellence.
All right, last question. Last 5x5 in the Connect bucket. This is also an anonymous one. And the question is, I've been thinking about the quote, "Everyone is interesting if you ask the right questions." You mentioned before that small talk is harder than it should be, and I agree. What questions lead to great conversations? What questions open people up? I'd love to hear your favorites. When you meet someone new, when you're getting to know someone better at the dinner table with your family, I want to ask better questions and have better conversations. So I love this question. I think having great conversations is one of the most underrated skill sets we can have in life. It is truly the vehicle we can use for greater connection. And I think that the more I think about this, great conversations actually just stem from, which is why this is such a good question. Great conversations stem from great questions. Otherwise, we pretty much just stay at the surface. So David Brooks wrote a great book called How to Know Someone. And they speak to this in that. And there's actually a list of questions. I'm wishing now that I had gone back and looked at those. Would have been probably made for a better answer here, but I'll do what I can to answer this question here. I think what most people do is they either don't ask questions at all, or they ask closed-ended questions or shallow questions. No questions at all, pretty obvious. Closed-ended questions mean they can answer it in one word, and most often it's like yes or no, but one word answers are still closed. And or shallow questions. So things like, what do you do? How are the kids? How was school today? None of those are necessarily inherently bad. They're just not going to create the meaningful connections that we want. So what we're actually looking for is giving somebody the opportunity to share a story. But if we can get them to share even more than a story, share a belief or a value, now we're really getting into connection. And we used to have this sign up in the gym here, which now I'm thinking about this. I definitely want to bring the sign back. We actually tore down the wall it was on. So we need to bring this back. But it kind of, we want the gym to be a special place. So what I put up on the wall was a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, which is, "Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people." So think about like the conversations that we have, how often people talk about other people, which can obviously very easily lead to gossip. Those are small minds. What most people do when they get around friends is they like talk about the past. Remember that time when, oh my gosh, when Jim did that thing in college, and oh yeah, remember that time we went to Martha's Vineyard, and oh yeah, and there was this, and no, and like political things, like no, the election should have gone this way or that way. What we want to try to pull conversations into is the ideas. That's where you get to really connect with people. So maybe instead of asking questions like, what do you do for work? Right? It's something along the more like, what's something exciting you've been working on recently? Or what's exciting? What are you excited about right now? I've actually used this one a lot. I think this is from David Brooks' book. Or even something as simple as like, what's something you're working on right now, either internally, externally. Gives people a sense of to think about that for a little bit. Similar is with school. Instead of asking, how was school today? Close-ended question. Good. Something like, tell me something that happened at school today. What made you laugh today? Anything feel hard at school today? Anybody do anything kind today? There's a sequence, which I forget where I got it from. It's called the rose, the thorn, and the bud, which is where you can ask people about school or work. What was your rose, thorn, and bud? What was the best part of your day today? The rose. What was the hardest part? The thorn. And what's something you're excited about? The bud. What's something you learned? Great way to kind of like frame up a real discussion with somebody, whether it's at the dinner table, when you pick them up from school in the car ride. Another great way to do this, another one that I've learned from, which is in David Brooks' book, which I also really like a lot, is describe your perfect day. What would that look like? You get so much out of that. First, I also like asking questions that's why I say like, who was kind to you, or what are you really excited about? What's something you learned? Those are all, they're going to send people in a positive direction, which I really like, which is why I really like that one of what's a perfect day look like for you? Because they get to envision this awesome, amazing day and puts them in a better mood right away. But another way to kind of get a layer deeper is by asking better follow-up questions. So maybe you do start off with like, what's a hobby of yours? And they go, woodworking. You go, first off, you can do like the Chris Voss thing, which is repeat it back with a question mark. Woodworking? Whoa, how did you get into that? And then they start to explain how they went to a camp, or their dad did it, or their uncle, or they were just always so curious about ... or they watched this thing. So asking follow-up questions. Woodworking? What do you love about woodworking? That's so interesting. Woodworking? Whoa. What's the coolest thing you built? Follow-up questions are probably the easiest way, because you don't have to be you don't have to prompt. You can start with a closed-end question, and they can give a one-word answer, and then you can lead into, based off of it, repeat it, and then just go, whoa, so cool. How did ... What was ... The kind of hack to this is, I think what most people go into conversations with is, how can I try to impress? How can I come off as interesting? Instead, going into conversations asking or thinking, what can I learn? I'm trying to learn something from this conversation. And then don't be afraid to ask small, dumb questions, because they'll probably lead to good ones later on. There was I forget where this is from as well, but they gave someone the challenge on a flight, where the challenge was, when you sit next to the person, you're not allowed to tell them anything about you, and you have to keep the conversation going for the entire flight. So, meaning it can't be about me, right? And you just have to keep on asking them questions, essentially. You have to keep the conversation going. And what's so fascinating is that when they interviewed the people not the person that was tasked with the challenge, but they interviewed the people getting off the plane that sat next to the person. And they said, what did you think of that person? And they went, that was he or she. That was the most interesting person I have ever met. And they go, really? Most interesting person. What did you learn about them? And they go, I'm not sure. Did you catch their name? No. Do you know where they're from? I don't. Do you know what they did for a living? That's so weird. No, but they were interesting. Yes, they were the best conversationalists I've ever been around. Man, they were awesome. This is how you get people to feel connected to you. So I think of this as, it's kind of reframed a little bit. I used to really hate small talk in a big way, and I've learned to lean into this a little more recently. And I've reframed this as, small talk is practice for connection. And this has been a massive improvement for me, and I feel this mostly with my in-laws and sort of the friends of friends. I feel so much closer to those people, whereas before I would kind of default to the wallflower at get-togethers, and now I'm a whole lot more engaging because I've realized the power of how connected you can be through this. So that's the 5x5. Definitely butchered the 5 minutes part of that. I think I probably doubled it. So maybe we'll call it the 5x10 going forward. But 5 questions on the 5 factors of health. If you guys want to get a question in the next one, send it to us and we'll get it to you. Appreciate you guys being here. Be good. Keep chasing it.
Thank you so much for being here. 2 quick things before you go. First, the 531 listener guide for this episode is in the show notes. 5 big ideas, 3 reflection questions, and 1 key takeaway. Check it out at the link in the show notes. And second, if you're ready to do the daily work, not just listen to the show, the Chase Club is where The crew does that together. Daily lessons, monthly challenges, a Friday Chase Club chat club, all of it at the link in the show notes and chasingexcellence.email.